Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gautama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and we're in chapter 17 of our book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. In this chapter, it's titled Eliminating Fears, Are You Really Scared? This is where I'm going to help you to understand what's causing your fears so that then you can actually eliminate them. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't have any fear in your mind whatsoever, whether it's a fear of snakes or spiders or fear of heights or even a fear of death or anything like this. You will have eliminated all those fears. So today you're going to understand how to actually eliminate your fears so you can get to the point where the mind's more liberated, more peaceful, calm, serenely content with joy. Because as long as there's fear in the mind, you can't experience permanent peace and permanent joy, because that fear is going to shake up the mind. So welcome to all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. The way that we start our class is we start with a meditation. So I'm going to guide you guys in a meditation session. Then we're going to move into a talk on eliminating fears. If you would like to join for meditation, usually seated, lying, or standing positions work really well for online learning. I'm going to start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation, which you guys are welcome to join along in. Then I'm going to come in with some guidance. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're all meditating together. Then we're going to come out of our meditation with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class, helping you to understand how to eliminate your fears. So if you'd like to join along for meditation, take whatever position you're comfortable with. And as I mentioned, you're welcome to chant along if you like. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Apivateyami Savakhato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavitu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma ma sati sata tawa manusarang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาโพตังมหาเกวันนังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวตาตัมโมดามังนามาสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสตาตาวามานุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you'd like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to everyone in our class today, whether you're joining through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Welcome to all of you guys. As I mentioned at the beginning of our class, I'm going to be teaching you today how to eliminate your fears. When you're having fear in the mind, this is going to shake up your mind and make it really challenging for you to experience the peace and the joy that is the enlightened mind. Having peace and joy in your mind means that you can go through life making wise decisions because your mind's not all shaken up. But if you're having fear in the mind, this can sometimes motivate your decisions and they can move in an unwise direction. Like maybe you have a fear of failure or something like this, and then therefore you don't even try to do the things that you need to do in life in order to accomplish more success because the mind has this fear of failure. Or maybe you have other types of fears that are inhibiting you from really reaching your full potential and your full ability to be successful in the world. So eliminating your fear is really important to help you not only experience this peace and joy that is the enlightened mind, but to construct a life for yourself that you feel is very fulfilling and satisfying and sustaining and rewarding as well. So getting rid of the fear is going to be really helpful for your mind. So I'm going to teach you this topic, and as we go, I'm going to open up to questions that you guys might have. So feel free to put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section. I'll be able to answer those. And then if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you might have. Before I get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little survey, a little poll here in Zoom. We've got some people here in Zoom, and I've got a little poll that I'm going to put on the screen. And for those of you guys that are in Zoom, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of time to answer these questions, because in order to help you to understand how to eliminate your fears, it's important to first understand what's causing your fears. And I can see all of you guys that are in Zoom. Most of you guys have been learning with me, And I would like to just check in to see if you guys have been learning with me and if you need a refresher on the Four Noble Truths, because I could teach the Four Noble Truths, or I could skip over them and actually just move right into helping you learn how to eliminate your fear. So it looks like most of you guys have answered the poll already, and it looks like most of you guys don't need a refresher on the Four Noble Truths. Okay, that's what I was thinking, that you guys don't need that. Let me just give a little bit more time to make sure everyone has a chance to enter in their data for the poll. Yeah, okay. So then in this case, since you guys don't need a refresher on the Four Noble Truths, what this allows us to do is it allows us to actually go right into the topic of teaching you how to eliminate fear. Because when I teach this topic, I teach it based on whoever's in the class. And sometimes there are brand new people in the class. Like I taught this class at the temple. For me, it was last night, but in Thailand, it was this morning. And they were all brand new students, pretty much. There was a few that had been learning with me. So I needed to teach the three universal truths, helping students to understand what that is. I needed to explain to them what craving, desire, attachment is. I needed to explain to them what the Four Noble Truths are, because you need to first understand what's causing your fear. If you don't understand what's causing it, the thing that I'm going to teach you of how to eliminate it isn't going to make a whole lot of sense to you. So the Four Noble Truths is helping you to understand the problem is discontentedness. The cause of the problem is the craving, desire, attachment. The mind's longing, yearning, it's craving permanence. And then the way to eliminate your discontentedness, i.e. eliminate your fear, is to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. If you eliminate your cause of your discontentedness, you eliminate the effect, which is the discontentedness. And then the Eightfold Path is the complete perfect plan that's going to teach you how to eliminate your discontentedness. And this is something that I've already taught in this group learning program, where I walk you guys through each individual factor, because you really need that on board and you really need to be practicing that consistently before you start doing what I'm going to teach you now to eliminate your fears. Because this Eightfold Path is like a foundational teaching that you need to learn each individual factor. That's going to help you to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. In terms of getting good memory and concentration and clarity of mind, getting any of the qualities that I talk about, like the personal and professional relationships really blossoming, getting to the point where you don't have even a bad mood anymore, you would need to know the Eightfold Path inside and out, backwards and forwards. And this is why I encourage students to be able to commit this to their memory and really learn it. That if somebody said to you, hey, Mike, what is right intention? You'd be able to say, oh, that's the intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of harmlessness. And you know what each one of those factors are, and you know how to practice it. And if somebody said, hey, Paul, I know you're studying the teachings of the Buddha. What is right speech? And you're like, oh, I know what right speech is. The Buddha teaches you to eliminate lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. And then more in detail, there's the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, which is ensuring that you're speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. And maybe they say, Kristen, what is right action? And then you're like, oh, I know what right action is. That's ensuring that you're not killing or stealing or having sexual misconduct, but more in totality, it's ensuring that you're not causing any harm through your bodily actions whatsoever. Right? So you would like to be able to do this for each individual one of these factors so that you have it committed to your memory. And if you don't know how to do that yet, you can study that. And then if you'd like to schedule personal guidance with me to walk through, to be like you're almost teaching it to me, this will be really helpful for you to confirm and solidify that you understand the Eightfold Path. And you can walk through this so that way you have that confidence that you know the Eightfold Path. Because you wouldn't actually be able to practice it and experience the results that the Buddha is describing and that I'm describing without actually committing this to your memory, because you wouldn't be able to practice it. That's where the results come in, is where you're actually knowing this particular teaching and you're actually practicing it in detail. And when you're getting this underway, it's helping you eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. It's helping to move the mind towards eliminating all cravings, desires, attachments. But then when you notice certain fears in your mind, there's going to be things that you need to do in order to eliminate those fears. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about now, because since you guys already know the Four Noble Truths, you know what's causing it. It's the mind craving permanence. So if the mind has a fear of snakes, for example, the mind is craving to permanently never see a snake. And when it sees a snake, that's impermanence to the mind. And now it's like, I'm scared. Or if the mind is afraid of heights, right? And the mind's like, I'm afraid of heights. I can't go up high. This is the mind craving to be permanently on the ground. Or if you have a fear of death, this is the mind craving permanent existence, and it doesn't want to let go, and it doesn't want to experience this impermanence. Or maybe you fear a painful death. You really fear the pain that you might experience as part of the dying process. This is the mind craving permanent comfort of the body. So there's various cravings, desires, attachments, that craving for permanence that is producing these fears. Maybe you have a fear of losing your life partner, and maybe that's a fear that you have. Maybe you have a craving to have them in your life permanently, or maybe you have a certain craving for the financial support that they provide, and you feel like you won't have that financial support if they die, or things like this. So what's motivating these fears to arise is the craving, desire, attachment. So once you understand that, now I can explain to you how to actually eliminate your fear. To eliminate the fear, you need to eliminate the underlying craving that is in the mind. There's a craving, desire, attachment that is producing this fear. And you're going to need to ensure that you understand what those cravings, desires, attachments are. So as I've taught in previous chapters, when you see discontentedness in your mind, that's like the red light on the dashboard of your car, alerting you that something is in the mind that's having craving, desire, attachment. So if you see fear in your mind, if you notice that fear arising, after you let it go and your mind is calm, you would like to look inward and discover what is the cravings, desires, attachments that is producing that. And then you would like to place the mind in the situation that it's having fear of, so that you can desensitize the mind to whatever it's fearing. And this is going to train the mind that there's nothing to fear whatsoever. And as you're doing this, you need to keep in mind the natural law of dhamma, that as long as you're not causing harm, there isn't going to be any harm coming back to you. So let me give you an example. Let's say that I had a fear of snakes, which I did have at one point, right? Let's just say you have a fear of snakes and you don't ever want to see snakes, and you're craving to never see snakes. And if I see a snake, I'm going to be so upset, right? I'm going to have all this fear that comes in the mind. Well, what the mind's going to tend to do with its lack of wisdom is it's going to want to push this away. It's going to try to never see a snake. That's the aversion. The mind's going to push away the being, or it's going to push away the situation and try to never ever see a snake, right? But that's not necessarily possible, because you live in a world that has all these beings, and you might encounter a snake or a spider or a mouse or some of these other things that people will fear. Well, pushing it away isn't going to eliminate your fear, because you haven't eliminated your craving, desire, attachment. You're just practicing aversion, and you're trying to push away the situation. But what you would like to do is put your mind in this situation. So if I was afraid of snakes, I would look at pictures of snakes, maybe on the internet or through a magazine or something like this. And then as I notice any fear arising in the mind, you're going to need to cut that off and let it go. Cut it off and let it go. And if you can catch it as a bodily sensation, that's the best thing to do, is catch it there. Don't allow it to actually come into the mind. Cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation. And after you do that 2 or 3 times, and eventually you notice that the mind's quite calm and quite peaceful with that, then you'd like to increment this up a little bit more, where now maybe you go to a museum where the snakes are not alive, but they're there and they're preserved and you can see them. And now you desensitize the mind to that you walk around and you see the museum. Maybe it takes you 1 or 2 visits, and now whenever you notice the fear arising, you cut that off and let it go. Then you would like to go to the next level, where now you actually go to places where snakes are actually moving around and they're alive, maybe like a pet store or a zoo or something like this. And now you desensitize the mind to this. You put it in that situation. And this is why it's important to remember the natural law of dhamma, that these snakes aren't going to hurt you. They're not going to bother you, because they're probably more afraid of you than you are of it. And it's going to run away from you typically, right? So when you are there desensitizing the mind to the snake, you need to just remind yourself of the natural law of dhamma, that you're not causing any harm to this snake, and this snake isn't going to cause any harm to you. And if you notice any fear arising, you cut this off and cut this off and cut this off. So what they refer to this as in modern psychology is they call it exposure therapy, right? You expose the mind to the thing that it fears, right? The Buddha was doing this 2,500 years ago. He already understood this. So he was teaching his students to do these kinds of things, right? So you can actually do this and you'll see that you'll eliminate your fear. Let's take another example. Let's just say I was afraid of heights. And I didn't like going up on ladders. I don't like going up in high buildings. And I'm really scared of this. Well, what I would do is probably go to a mall and go up to the first floor and kind of look over the edge and kind of sit there. And you're probably going to feel the fear and maybe some anxiety coming up. You might feel the bodily sensations with that. And you like to cut that off and cut that off and cut that off. And then if you're feeling comfortable, maybe go up to the second or third floor and now look over the edge with that, right? And now you desensitize the mind to that. And then go up a little bit higher and a little bit higher and a little bit higher. And each time you go up a little bit higher, because someday you're going to go into an elevator thinking you're going down to the basement. And next thing you know, boom, it's going to take you up to the 30th floor. And you're at the 30th floor and you're like, oh my goodness, this craving, your mind hasn't addressed this craving. And now you have all this fear that's coming into the mind. So you can actually desensitize the mind to this. Let's just say you were afraid of death. And I was afraid of dying, right? In this situation, you might be thinking like, how can I put my mind in a situation where I'm exposing my mind to death, because you're not interested in killing yourself, right? That would be very unwise. So you're not going to kill yourself to eliminate your fear. What you can do is you can do something called contemplation of death. This is what the Buddha referred to it as, or reflection on death. What you do is you put your mind in this situation through essentially convincing the mind that you've actually died. The way that you do this is you kind of sit quietly and you close your eyes, and within your mind, you envision that you've died, and you essentially convince the mind that you've died. You might think about the police or a doctor or somebody like this calling up your family, calling up your loved ones, calling up your mother, your father, your life partner, and you kind of think about this within your own mind, that this has occurred. It's almost like you're like a fly on the wall, envisioning this process taking place, that you've died. Maybe you were in a terrible car accident, or maybe you had cancer, or who knows what else might have happened, right? You can envision whatever it is. You're not aspiring to die. You're just essentially convincing the mind that you have died. And now you walk through the process. You sit and you kind of walk through and play out this scenario as if you're like a fly on the wall. So whether it's your family getting informed about your death, whether there's a funeral, a burial, a cremation, whether there's a ceremony or a viewing or any kind of things like this, and you kind of play this out for 10, 15 minutes within your own mind. And you might actually grieve. You might be sorrowful. You might start crying. You might feel really uncomfortable. And if this is the case, this is because you're triggering that craving. And now you're going to need to cut that off and cut that off and cut that off. And over time, your mind will regain its composure. In this particular technique of contemplation of death or reflection of death, it's not something that you do every day. You do it kind of like once a month or once every 2 weeks at the very most, right? You would like to put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, which is thinking about your own death. Because normally when people are afraid of death, they just try to avoid it. They try to push it out of their mind. That's the aversion. And the thing is that death is going to come visit you. It's only a matter of time. It's going to come visit every single one of us. It's only a matter of time. So death is kind of waiting for you in the corner, and it's going to come visit you. But what you're doing with contemplation of death or reflection of death, it's like you're saying, I see you, death. I see you over there. I know you're going to come visit me, but you know what? I'm going to come visit you. And now you get to approach death on your terms. Instead of allowing death to kind of sneak up on you and catch you by surprise and allowing all this fear to come up in your mind and where you're kind of like, all shaken up about it, instead, you're going to go visit death, right? And now you go visit it a few times until your mind has fully let go, where you can do a contemplation of death and you don't have any fear. There's no sorrow or grief or anything. So you might do it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Each person's a little bit different. It really depends on how much craving that you have in your own mind. I'll give you another example of a fear so that you can see how to use these techniques that I'm talking about here to be able to eliminate your fear. I've given you the fear of snakes, spiders, and mice. I've given you the fear of heights, given you the fear of death. But now let's take another fear. Let's just say, like an example, this is a real life example for me, that one day I accidentally left the house without my mobile phone. I was driving down the road. I was in my wife's truck. I reached down for the phone and I realized there was no phone in my pocket. And I got all this fear that came up in my mind. And I happened to be sitting at a traffic light. And my initial thought was to pull a U-turn and go get the phone, because that's what the mind's going to typically do in the unenlightened state. Is it lacks wisdom of what the real problem is, and it's kind of confused, and it thinks the way to solve this problem is go get the phone, because your mind wants to latch on to the phone and it's craving that permanence. Well, when I was sitting there at the red traffic light, I realized, no, that's not what the mind needs. What the mind needs, it needs to be separated from this phone. It needs to get comfortable with being outside without this phone. So I decided to continue on my day and not go back to the phone. I was only supposed to be out for about an hour and a half that day, but I extended the amount of time that I was outside. I went to go have dinner. I went to the movies. I did some shopping. I didn't buy anything, but I walked around, did some shopping. I was out for like 5 or 6 hours. And then when I went home, I didn't just run to the phone and check the phone. I just left it where it was. For 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, I just did other stuff. And then eventually I went and checked the phone. And then I waited about 2 or 3 days, and then I did it again. I intentionally left the phone at home. And when I went outside the second time, I didn't have any fear, but I was definitely uncomfortable. There was like this awkwardness. It just felt strange to be going outside without the phone. It was almost like going outside naked, right? It just felt odd or strange. So I went outside again for 5 or 6 hours, came home, didn't go to the phone right away, waited 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. Then I waited another 3, 4, 5 days, and I went outside again, a third time without the phone. And this time there was no fear, there was no awkwardness, there was no uncomfortableness. And I was like, I think I've eliminated this fear. I've eliminated this craving, desire, attachment that is producing this fear. This is really nice. This actually worked, just like the Buddha taught. This is perfect. So then about 2 months went by, and I accidentally left the phone at home again. And when I was driving down the street, I reached for the phone wasn't there. And I was like, oh, well, and I just kept on going, right? And I was like, no fear. There was no fear at all this time. It was the same exact situation. And then about a year after that, I dropped the phone and it shattered. The screen shattered. And I picked it up and I looked at it and I started laughing. And I was like, of course it just broke, right? It's impermanent. And fortunately, my wife had another phone at the time and I could just use her phone because I couldn't afford to buy another phone. And it was just a really old iPhone 6. So I was able to use that for an extended period of time, right? So you're most likely attached to your phone. If you haven't done what I just described, you're most likely attached to it. What you would like to do is test your mind, is leave it at home a few times. Go out for several hours. Come home and don't look at your phone for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. This is really helpful for your mind. Do it for 2 or 3 or 4 times and test your mind. Because at some point, this phone's going to get lost. It's going to get stolen. It's going to break. You're going to misplace it. There's going to be something like that. And if your mind's all shaken up when you're looking for your phone, that's the discontentedness because of the craving, desire, attachment. So you would like to confront this and put the mind in that situation so that you can get rid of any craving, desire, attachment that's in the mind. And this is going to get your mind to more stability, more steadiness, more calmness. Because when we talk about the qualities of mind that are the results of training your mind, like the focus, the concentration, the deep memory, and all these other qualities, the results of practicing the path, it doesn't just come from meditation. Meditation isn't actually what's producing these results. The focus, the quality of mind being improved, what's actually producing it is the elimination of craving, desire, attachment. Because when your mind has craving, desire, attachment, and it's pulling in all these different directions, you won't have focus, you won't have clarity of mind, you won't have deep memory, you won't have these qualities that we talk about. So the meditation is actually the tool or technique that's helping you to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. So it's the elimination of the craving, desire, attachments that's producing the results and the qualities of your mind. In this technique that I'm describing about putting your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, that's eliminating your cravings, desires, attachments too. And that's where you're going to see the mind becoming more focused, more concentrated, having clarity of mind and deep memory. So that's why you would like to really pay attention to these things and work on eliminating your cravings, desires, attachments first with the Eightfold Path, then using things like this, where you're putting your mind in the situation. Whenever you see there's any fear, you're going to need to confront that fear, because the mind's going to want to push it away and avoid it, but you would like to confront it. So let's just say you're afraid of large crowds, and whenever you're around large crowds, you feel this fear and anxiety. You're not going to eliminate that by pushing this away. I'm never going to go around a large crowd. I'm never going to go to a concert. I'm never going to go to a fair or a festival. I'm never going to go to a big event. I don't want to be around crowds because I'm really afraid of crowds. You're not going to actually eliminate it that way, because the craving, desire, attachment is still in your mind, and it's still producing the lack of concentration, the lack of clarity, the lack of focus, and the lack of memory. You might be walking down the street someday and you turn the corner in maybe New York City or something, and boom, there you are, you're in a big crowd. So you would like to put your mind in the situation where it's around crowds and train it to be comfortable. Let's just say you were in a accident, like a car accident, a terrible car accident, and now you're afraid to be in a car. And anytime you're in a car, you're like so fearful. You're even hitting the phantom brake, right? Maybe you're in the passenger side, and when somebody's driving, you're like stepping on the brake and trying to brake the car because you're so scared of being in a car again. Well, you're not going to eliminate this fear by never going into a car again. What you would like to do in this situation is, of course, recover from the physical aspects of the accident, but then get back in a car. But do it with somebody that you trust. Have somebody that you trust and that you have confidence in, that they drive the car and you're in the passenger side. And have them drive you around your neighborhood or some smaller streets, right? And then you come back to the house and you start to disassociate with this car as meaning, if I'm in a car, there's going to be pain. So you just had a now positive experience in a car, because previously you went out in the car and you got in an accident, and now your mind's clinging to that, and it thinks every time I go out into a car, I'm going to have an accident. But now you just went out with a person that you trust, and you went on some small streets, and now you had a positive experience where you didn't get in a car accident. And then maybe you go out with that person you trust on a little bit bigger streets, maybe some medium-sized streets. And now you have them drive you around for a little while. And then you come back and now you see that you didn't experience any pain, you didn't get in an accident, and you start associating this car with something that's positive, that, hey, you can have a good experience with this car. And now maybe you go with that person out on bigger roads, like big highways and things like that, really fast moving cars around you. And now you desensitize the mind to that. But then you're going to ultimately maybe need to drive yourself. Get in the driver's seat and you drive on the smaller streets, right? And you drive around on the smaller streets, and now you come back and you see you didn't get in an accident. And now you wait a few days or however long, and you go out on the medium-sized streets. And again, you go out on the bigger streets. And slowly but surely, you increment the stimulus so that you get to the point where you're starting to associate this car with something positive, that you've actually now replaced the clinging that the mind's doing to this experience that you had in the past. Now you can see that you can go out in a car and not get in an accident. Because when people talk about trauma, what they're really talking about is the mind is clinging to a past experience, and now you're forming feelings in the present moment based on those past experiences. So trauma is just a way of describing how the mind clings to experiences from the past, and now you're forming feelings in the present moment based on those things. But you can get to the point where you let that go. Trauma is not permanent. Right? Sometimes people think when they've had a traumatic experience, they'll say, I can never get over this. This is going to be with me for the rest of my life. this isn't true. You can actually eliminate that trauma. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's an accident or any other aspect of your life where your mind's holding on and clinging to a past experience, and now maybe it's fearful in the present moment. You can let that go. So let's just say I was walking down the street and I got beat up with somebody in a green jacket. Let's say when I was a child, I was walking down the street and this person in a green jacket beat me up and left me there, and I was like suffering, and maybe I had all kinds of injuries. I needed to go to the hospital and stuff. Well, now every time I see somebody with a green jacket, the mind is fearful. That's just the mind clinging to the past experience and forming feelings now based on that past experience. And the mind needs to let go of this. That same thing that the mind does where it craves permanence, it thinks that this experience that I had 6 months ago where someone beat me up with a green jacket, that it thinks that that is permanent. And every single person that I see with a green jacket is going to beat me up. So you need to go around people that wear green jackets and start seeing that that was an isolated situation. And this is what's going to help you to eliminate your fear. Okay, so this is what I had to share with you guys today. It's just a short class because you guys didn't need a refresher on the Four Noble Truths. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You can ask questions about what I just presented to you. If you have certain fears and you're curious about how to eliminate them and you would like me to help you figure out how to put your mind in this situation, I can do that for you. So you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom electronically and I'll answer any and all questions that you guys have. So it looks like Marcy has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Teacher David. So I have multiple animals, or I share dwelling with multiple animals, and I have been using the contemplation of death because some of my animals are becoming of elderly age. So I have one of my guinea pigs was diagnosed with a tumor in the face. So I had been working on contemplation of death for him. But yesterday, the other guinea pig that did not appear to be ill or suffering from anything passed away. So I hadn't really worked any kind of contemplation of death for him. I did work, Maverick is the one that passed away. Goose is the one with the tumor, but I had been working on it for Goose. But yesterday when I, found him deceased, there was shock in the mind, and then I had to go dig a hole to bury him. But then afterwards, it was uncontrollable tears. Like I wasn't, I don't know how to explain in the sense like I was clear in understanding that this is the cycle, this is what happens, this is death, this, you know what I mean? And he's now passed on to the next realm, which is something that's clear in the mind. But I couldn't turn off the tears. Like I couldn't, there was this bodily reaction that I couldn't hold. Mm-hmm. I couldn't control. And I'm just wondering if, it was almost like a bodily reaction, but like there was knowledge. So there was like this almost like mental and physical disconnect. Does that sound?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in those situations, obviously your attachment to your guinea pig was triggered and the mind was craving permanence in that situation, and it was holding on. And now when it experienced this impermanence, it didn't like it. So if you notice that and you're crying, if you can cut it off and let it go, okay, great. But sometimes you just need that really good cry to let it go, right? And there's no harm in that. So you just get it all out. Just cry and cry and cry. Cry as much as you need to cry. Let it all out and have that really good cry, or maybe have 2 or 3 or 4 really good cries, right? And then on the other side of that, the mind will have let go. And that's where now your mind, you're going to notice more focus, more concentration, more clarity, because that craving was always there. And you may or may not have known about it. That attachment was there and you may or may not known about it. And it was hindering you from experiencing a certain amount of concentration and focus and clarity and deep memory and things like this, because it's part of the pollution of mind. And when you get rid of it, you'll see your mind will kind of increase its concentration and focus. Sometimes we need to experience the death of a being in order to eliminate our craving, desire, attachment for that being. So like my wife, she had the death of her sister, her mom, and her dad all in about 1.5 years lifespan. It was like boom, boom, boom. And her sister was a younger sister. And it was like death, death, death. right? And she never did contemplation of death for them because she didn't know about that. So she was very sad, of course, and she cried and she was upset. But ultimately, on the other side of that, that's where her mind got to the freedom and the liberation. So sometimes you need to experience the death in order to let it go. But if you do the contemplation of death, that's going to help you to let go of the attachment before the being dies. So that way, when they die, your mind can be content and peaceful. But sometimes we have so many beings in our life that you haven't had enough time to do the contemplation of death, to let go of all of those people. So that's where you would work on that. But sometimes you experience a death before you've had a chance to work on it. So that disconnect that you experience between the body and the mind, that helps you to be able to see that they're two separate things, that they're not the same thing. And if you have to cry, just cry and let it go. And then afterwards, regain your composure. And then that's where the peace and the joy and the more focus and concentration will be able to come into the mind.
Yeah, I did notice that after I just allowed, instead of having a battle, after I just allowed the body to cry, I woke up this morning and there's no I guess that feeling of heartache or that feeling of missing or anything like that. It was just that, the fact that, it was an experience that the mind had not been prepared for. I've been preparing for Goose, and then I go downstairs and it's Maverick, so it was something that the mind wasn't prepared for. So thank you, Teacher David. I appreciate it.
Goose and Maverick, huh?
Yeah. A little bit of a Top Gun fan, I guess. Yeah. All right.
Oh, so you said Maverick died first?
Yeah, yeah.
Different than the movie.
Huh?
Different than the movie.
Very different from the movie. And like I said, I had been preparing for Goose because he has a tumor that's inoperable and it's going to result in his death. So I had been doing a lot of the contemplation for him, and preparing for the mind. And then, it was Maverick that went first, and I was just kind of like, whoa, you know what I mean? It was definitely an experience, but better for it for sure. Because I can see that, today there's that peace. The peace is back, in that sense.
Yeah, it gave you some impermanence there. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Sounds good. All right. So Jess had asked a question earlier about how do you train the mind to eliminate fear? This is Jess in Facebook. Asked about how to eliminate fear to other people, not yourself, if your own fear of death, but other people. And I think Jess just got the information she needed from our conversation with Marcy, because I think, Jess, you've deleted your question. But just for those of you guys that are out there that maybe didn't understand, you can actually do this contemplation of death or reflection of death, not only for yourself to eliminate fear of death for yourself, but other beings as well. If it's family members or pets or things like this, if you know your mind's attached, they're going to die at some point. You're going to experience that death. And it can be painful if you allow the attachment to be there. But if you confront this death through contemplation of death, like maybe you envision your husband or your wife dying, or you can do this contemplation of death for your animals, and you're going to need to do it multiple times. It's not going to be just one time and it's gone. And when I did this, I did it in my early 20s. I did it for my mom and my grandmother because those are the ones that I was attached to. And what I noticed is after the contemplation of death, I had all these questions in my mind. There were certain things that if they had truly died, that I felt like I'd never asked them these questions, and I wouldn't have been able to ask them these questions. And there were certain things that I was interested to tell them, that if they had actually died, I'd never tell those things, and I wouldn't be able to do this. So I decided that after the contemplation of death, I was going to call them up and talk to them. So I called them up and I was like, Grandma, I've always been meaning to ask you these questions. And I just started asking her these questions. And I said, I've always been meaning to tell you these things. And I started telling her these things. And I did this for my mom too. So in 2017, when my mom actually died, she called me on her deathbed and she said, hey, I just found out I have cancer. I've got 1 week to live. And, I just was calling to say goodbye and sorry for everything I've ever done in my life and the way I treated you. And I said, oh, Mom, no worries. I said, you did the best you could, rest in peace. I had nothing to share with her. I had nothing to say other than, be well, take care. I appreciate everything you've done for me. Those kinds of things. I didn't have all this laundry list of things to talk to her about. I wasn't fearful. I wasn't upset. I never grieved about my mom's death. And it's not because I didn't love her, because oftentimes people think it's love that's causing the grief, but it's not actually the love. It's the craving, desire, attachment. So when mom called me, it was kind of like in my mind, it was like, okay, well, we knew this day was going to come at some point. So when I did the reflection of death in my early 20s, every single moment that I spent with my mom and my grandmother after that, it felt like bonus time. It felt like I got all this bonus time because I had convinced my mind that they actually had died. So you might notice that when you're doing contemplation of death for other people, where you're envisioning your family members dying, there might be certain things that you feel like you want to say to them that if they had truly died, you wouldn't be able to, or maybe certain questions that you need to ask them, certain information from them that you wouldn't have ever been able to ask them. So you have that opportunity. And that's one of the beautiful things about contemplation of death, because if they actually died, you wouldn't have that ability. You wouldn't be able to call them up on the phone and be like, Grandma, I've always been meaning to ask you, right? Because she would have actually died and you wouldn't have been able to contact her. So Jess, that's to help you and anyone else who is asking that type of question or thinking about that kind of question. But Jess has another question here. She says, hello, Teacher David. How do your wife let go of her attachment? My best friend died in April and I'm still so sad about it. I am happy in a lot of moments while remembering her, but she was so young and full of life. It was a tragic death too. What specific steps can I take or meditations can I do? I understand and recognize that it is my attachment, but I don't want to let go of her in a way. Maybe that is wrong. I'm not sure, but I miss her so much and it's hard to let go. Okay, so sometimes people think that the feelings that you have, like, the fond memories and the things like this, or even the love that you have, they think that that's what's causing the painful feelings and the mind doesn't want to let go. I had this when I was very young. When I was 16 years old, my girlfriend died, my very first significant girlfriend, and she was actually pregnant at the time. She was like 6 or 8 weeks pregnant and she died, right? So my mind during that period of time, because I lacked wisdom, I thought if I let go of the grief and the sorrow and the sadness, I was letting go of the love that I had for my girlfriend. And what I came to realize is that wasn't true. That I could eliminate those painful feelings through eliminating the craving, desire, attachment, and I could maintain the love and I could maintain the appreciation and the gratitude for having this person in my life. So the first thing you need to understand is those painful feelings you're having, it's not coming from your love, it's not coming from your appreciation and your gratitude for this person, it's coming from your attachment. So you can eliminate your attachment while still maintaining your love and your gratitude and your appreciation for this person. What I suggest you do, Jess, is that you do breathing mindfulness meditation, because I haven't, spent that much time with you. I'm not sure how much of that you're doing, but breathing mindfulness meditation, the way that I teach it, you can access it on our YouTube channel and our podcast and in our books. That's going to train your mind to let go, let go, let go. And also practicing generosity, where you're giving and sharing more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return, such as your time, effort, energy, and resources. That's what you would like to be doing on a consistent, ongoing basis, not just because of this situation, but you would like to be doing that all throughout your life. Then one of the things that the Buddha teaches you in order to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment for a particular person who's died is to give out gifts on their behalf. So like maybe you buy some candies and you go to work and you give out these candies and say that this is in honor of my friend who died. Right? And now you give away these candies, or you give away supplies, or I don't know, maybe your friend was interested in some charitable organization and you would like to support this charitable organization, and you give away these gifts on behalf of your friend. And this is going to train your mind to let go of that attachment so you can maintain your love, your appreciation, and your gratitude for this person without having those painful feelings. So Mayu Lee on Facebook is asking questions here. She says, Teacher, I have a couple of questions. 1, is it possible that the mind have fear about something that the mind is not aware of because the mind has not yet experienced or encountered it? If so, would that hinder the mind from attaining enlightenment? It is possible to have a fear without realizing it, but as you age, you've actually, encountered pretty much all the different things that you could potentially fear. So if you had fear in your mind, it means there's a craving, desire, attachment there. And yes, you wouldn't be able to experience enlightenment until you eliminate that craving, desire, attachment. But the idea of going through like 80 years of life or, natural life and not encountering that thing would be actually kind of rare. So I can give you guys an example. Like my son, when we were living in the US, he was about 2 years old and we were walking down the street. And when we were walking down the street, I was holding his hand and this dog jumped on him. And it was a puppy. It was like 9 months old, probably 12 months old. But it was a big dog. It was like a German Shepherd. And he was just a little tiny kid, barely walking. And when this dog jumped on him, this dog just wanted to play. The dog was like, little kid, just like me. I'm a little kid too. And the dog jumped on it and started licking my son and all this kind of stuff. And he cried and cried and cried. And I had to pick him up and hold him in my arms and kind of walk past the dog, right? But then what I noticed when we got to Thailand, when he was about 5 or 6 years old, I noticed that he was afraid of dogs. Every time he was around dogs, he was really afraid of them. He went in the opposite direction. And I asked him, I said, do you have any memories of what happened in the US around dogs? And he said, no, I don't remember. Right? And I said, oh, okay. Well, let me explain to you why you're having this fear. This is something that happened when you were 2 years old. So see, in that situation, he didn't know that this thing happened, because you can have these things happen early in life or even in previous lives. And now your mind clings to those experiences and you can go through life not realizing that you've actually have this craving, desire, attachment, and there's this fear in the mind. But more likely than not, you're going to encounter a situation where your mind has to confront that. So these are the kind of things that you can experience where the mind is not aware of a particular craving, desire, attachment, or some kind of clinging that the mind's having. But typically you're going to come in contact with those things at some point. The second question Mayuli asked is, I have many fears of all sorts of animals. Does that mean I have to expose this being to each type of animals for desensitization? For example, I know the mind have fear of tiger and is dangerous to have this being to come into contact with the tiger. How could I let go about desensitizing that? So the answer is yes. You're going to need to expose the mind to each individual animal. And it doesn't mean you have to go in and pet the tiger, right? Because there are actually places like that in Thailand that you can do those kinds of things. But I don't necessarily recommend that, even though those places seem quite safe. But you can look at pictures, you can go to zoos, you can go to places like that. You can look at videos of tigers and things like this. So you can expose your mind to all these different animals. And you might notice when you do 2 or 3 of them that the other ones aren't really existing anymore, that it just kind of gets away from the mind because you've let go of this kind of thing. So if you had like 100 different animals that you were afraid of, I suspect after doing 2 or 3 or 4 that your mind will kind of let go of the fear for the other ones too. All right, so thank you Mayuli and Jess, appreciate your questions. All right, I don't see anything in YouTube, but I see there's a question here with Yusuf. Go ahead, Yusuf.
I had a thought about my father being dead, and the craving was so clear that if my father died, then who is going to repair stuff in the house, the electricity, the machines, and this similar stuff. So I was so fearful. It wasn't about, I will miss my dad and such things. When I didn't have those thoughts, I was being don't I love my dad? But then I remembered that it's attachment if I were to have those things. But my question is what did you experience when your father died about the housework? Who did repair the electricity devices or the machines or those similar stuff? Because when I think about my dad being dead and the housework then is left for me or my brother, I become fearful because I know nothing about those things.
Okay, so what I suggest you do is, in addition to contemplation of death for your dad, is that you learn how to do that housework. That's what you need to be able to do, so you don't have that fear anymore. You're in your 20s. There's no reason why you can't learn those kinds of things. That's part of the path to enlightenment, is that you need to stand up on your own 2 feet, where you're not dependent on other people for these kinds of things. If you're dependent on your dad to do housework, and if he died, it's oh my goodness, I don't know how to do housework. The mind is not enlightened. So you need to be able to be self-sufficient While at the same time, you might live with people and everybody contributes to the housework and stuff like that. You need to be able to get to the point where you're not dependent. Being dependent on somebody is to have a craving, desire, attachment, because the mind feels like I can't survive in this world without this being doing the housework for me. So in addition to the contemplation of death, you would like to learn how to do that housework so that the mind is no longer fearful if dad dies.
Okay, understood. I have a second question about fear. So, are you familiar with the device MRI?
Yes.
Okay, so I have seen a video about this device where the publisher of the video was writing that people fear this device so much. So I was like, wow, this would be like a great opportunity for me to eliminate this fear if it does exist. So I was like enthusiastic or motivated to experience such an experience. But with the girls, I have fear that I can't really like maybe understand or see what is the reason behind it. Like to talk to a girl that I don't know, the mind is being fearful. I don't think I have been contemplating on this, and I don't think it is really related to the personal existence view. Yeah, there might be some here and there, but it is not the reason. I think the reason is I have a actually I don't know the reason why. So kind of please help me with that.
Yeah, so you have a fear of talking to girls?
To new girls, yes.
Okay.
New.
So this might actually be something that you enjoy hearing, Yusuf. You're going to need to put your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. You're going to need to talk to some ladies, and you're going to need to get comfortable with that. So that's what I suggest you do, is that, yes, do your breathing mindfulness meditation, your generosity, all those other things on the Eightfold Path, but you're going to need to get comfortable talking with different women. But you're going to need to do it in a way where you don't crave something from them. That might be what's going on there, that you're craving something from them. Like if you want sex from them, or you want them to admire you, or you want them to go out on a date with you. You need to enter into a conversation where you don't want anything from this person. All you're interested in doing is having a conversation with that person, where you're not going into it for any other reason than to just talk to them and have a conversation.
I didn't understand the first thing you said, where you said you enjoy this thing or something.
Yeah, what I was saying is, typically like somebody, like if I'm teaching them to eliminate fear of snakes, I will say, you need to put your mind in that situation, and they're like, oh no, I don't want to see any snakes, right? But for you need to put your mind in the situation where you talk to women, and I said, oh, you might actually like this.
Oh, it's so funny. I do talk with the girls a lot, like even new girls, but the fear isn't like going away. And I am asking because I still don't know. I said it is not related to the personal existence view. And them being like, sometimes when you talk to a person, they only answer what you say. They don't talk back to you or seem being fearful or pleasant while talking to you. So even if they were blocking me, I will still don't think that this is what making me fearful. So I still can't identify this fear, even though that I am talking to girls, I have been contemplating on that, but it's still hard for me to identify the reason.
It's always going to be craving, desire, attachment. Anytime the mind is experiencing any discontentedness, it's always craving, desire, attachment. What is the specific craving, desire, attachment? In most cases, you can identify it. In some cases, you may not be able to. But if you know that what's triggering it is talking to women, then you would like to do that so that gives you an opportunity to cut it off and let it go.
So if I did cut it off and let it go, it is fine. The mind can like eliminate it even though he doesn't know about it. Or know what it is?
Yeah, you can still eliminate the craving by putting your mind in the situation, even without knowing specifically what is the exact craving. By just putting your mind in that situation and training it to be comfortable in that situation, you can still eliminate the craving, desire, attachment.
Okay, thank you, comedian guy.
Okay, take care. All right, so we have a question coming in on YouTube. It says, hello, Teacher David. Sometimes people hurt others, not because they've been harmed, but because of fear. How do you deal with the situation when someone hurts you out of fear? Thank you. I'm not sure if I understand 100%. When you say hurt you, do you mean like bodily harm or harm to your material possessions or your reputation? If you could give me some more details on that, I'm going to go to Paul and talk to him in Zoom. But then if you can add some more details there in YouTube, that'll help me to be able to help you. Okay, so it looks like Paul. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, David. At the start of this talk, you gave examples of different fears, and one was fear of failure. And it occurred to me that that's probably a big thing in my life is fear of failure. And I managed, to get through life and, successfully, let's say. But there was always this fear of failure through my whole life, I think. And it's even as a fear of failure in this endeavor of working towards enlightenment. Can you talk to that?
Yeah.
Specifically, and what you could recommend?
Yeah, what you can do is you can set goals for yourself that you know that you're not going to be able to obtain, and then work towards it as best as you can. And then like you're going to fail at this goal. I don't think of it truly as failing, because everything you do in life, there's benefit. Because if you didn't get to a goal, there's cultivation of wisdom in that process. So you've actually succeeded. But because the mind is having this perception of failure, what you can do is you can create goals for yourself. I did this a lot too when I was very young. I would create goals for myself that I couldn't actually obtain, and I would work towards them, and I'd get 60 or 70 or 80% of the way there, and I just couldn't obtain the rest of the goal, and I just had to get comfortable with that. And that's what a true goal is, where if the mind has a craving, desire, attachment for success, then when you're not successful, the mind doesn't like that impermanence. So you would like to put the mind in the situation where it's not going to be successful in this situation. There's no possible way that it can be successful. And now by doing that, that'll help the mind to get comfortable with not fulfilling that particular craving, desire, attachment.
Okay, I'll have to think about that as to what I could do. So you're saying set a goal that you can't obtain. Yeah. And then when you don't obtain it, let go of the fear, the sensation that, the discomfort.
Yeah, you're eliminating the craving, desire, attachment, the underlying craving, desire, attachment. So let's just say you set a goal that you want $1 million in your bank account, and like there's no way for you to do that. So now you just kind of work for a little while, not with craving, desire, attachment, but you're trying to save your money. And maybe you set a goal that you're going to have $1 million in the next 4 weeks, right? And you know that it's not possible for you to do that. So now you work towards that and you try to save a little bit of money here and there. And you get to the end of your 4 weeks and you know you can't get to that $1 million. This is like a silly one, but you would like to look at other things like this where you can't get to the goal. It's impossible for you to get to it. And then your mind's going to need to get comfortable with that.
What about, fear of not being successful at this whole process of working towards enlightenment?
So what I would do is this same technique that the Buddha teaches you, where you do contemplation of death and reflection of death and you envision dying. I would do the same thing where you sit quietly with your eyes closed, envision dying without having gotten to enlightenment, and that you need to experience rebirth. And I know that you don't understand rebirth or have that wisdom yet, but just you can think about that there's death and that you need to be reborn over and over and over again, and that you never got to peace, you never got to joy, you were disgruntled and angry on your deathbed, you were frustrated and agitated, and just envision this in your mind that this has occurred. And now you just get comfortable with the fact that that has occurred. So that's the way that you can do that. Another way that'll help you, because I used to have a craving for getting to enlightenment. I was really longing, yearning to get to enlightenment. And the way that I helped my mind to get rid of that is I understood that the way that you can think about it is that the mind is already enlightened, right? Because oftentimes if there's something that you have to attain, the mind can crave and long and yearn for it because you don't have it yet, so that you have to chase after it in order to attain it. But the way that I was seeing this work is it's almost like the mind is already enlightened and there's these pollutions in the way. And you just got to get the pollutions out of the way so that the qualities of enlightenment can shine through. It's kind of like the sun, and then there's the clouds in front of the sun, and you got to peel the clouds away. The sun is always there. It's just that the clouds were in the way. So it's the same thing as if you think about this as like, Paul, your mind is already enlightened. The mind's already enlightened. It's already enlightened, right? You just got to get these pollutions out of the way so that you can experience the qualities of it. So now the mind can eliminate its longing, yearning for it because you've already got it. Where oftentimes we long and yearn for things that we don't have. So if you start to understand this, and this is actually true reality, this is more of what you can notice as your mind's getting closer and closer to enlightenment, that the qualities of enlightenment shine through more and more. And this is more indicative of understanding that the mind is already enlightened, because it's not like the mind is unenlightened, and then just one day a switch flips and you're enlightened. That's not the way it actually works. The qualities of enlightenment start to shine through more and more, like when the rays of the sun are shining through as the clouds are being pulled back. That's exactly what it's like to experience enlightenment. So if you think about it as your mind is already enlightened, then this can help you to eliminate any craving, desire, attachment for enlightenment.
Okay, then. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Okay, let me see if we have any others. Okay, it looks like Kristen or Ted has a question.
Hi, thank you, Teacher David. I just actually related so much to what Paul just shared, because just was reading the last chapter last week about letting go of the ego. I actually have fear of letting go of the ego, and what that would mean, like living without my ego. God, and it was almost like I had that sense of fear when I was thinking about all the things that you were sort of describing, and realizing like I live in my ego all the time and don't even realize it. And so kind of like that idea of what if I could never let it go? Well, you know, what if I'm stuck in that state of mind? And so it's kind of helpful to just hear that, I think, a little bit, that it's just, you know, progress, right? And just keep working at it. So I just related to that. And I definitely want to have a one-on-one with you about the ego, I think.
Sure.
Soon.
Pleased to help you. Yeah, I experienced fear when letting go of personal existence view, because I was clinging to like, I am a businessman, I am an entrepreneur, I am wealthy, I am this, I am that. I had all these I am in there. And when I realized where I was headed towards and what I was actually going to be doing, which is sharing these teachings, I realized that I'm not an entrepreneur. I am not a businessman. I am not going to be wealthy. You know, I always had this growing up that I was going to somehow have a private airplane and all this other stuff. And, you know, I had to let all that go, and it was fearful. It was like walking off a cliff. And that was part of letting go of the ego. Some people call it ego death, because you're like killing the ego. And it can be very fearful for the mind to do that. And what you do is you just keep confronting it and confronting it and confronting it. So what you're experiencing is normal, but you can move past it. And that's where the liberation and the freedom comes in.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so Leo added some more here. It could be verbal, for example, in a romantic relationship. For example, if the other person is feeling jealous. Okay, so if another person is feeling jealous, and they do things towards you, you don't have to be affected by that, right? You're not causing that person's jealousy. Their jealousy is being caused by your cravings, desires, attachments. That's what's causing their jealousy. That's why you need to know the Four Noble Truths first. When you understand the Four Noble Truths in detail, the way that I teach it through all the resources that I share, you can understand that not only does your mind cause its own discontentedness, but other people's do too. So if somebody's jealous of you, for example, like maybe it's a boyfriend or girlfriend or something like this, and they're holding on to you. And now when you talk to somebody else, they get jealous of that. And now they want to act out on you. In those situations, you need to understand that they're causing their own jealousy. You can't fix their jealousy. They have to eliminate their cravings, desires, attachments. And if somebody is attempting to hurt you, meaning hurting you like your physical body, your material possessions, or your reputation, then if I was you, I'd distance yourself from that person. If you're talking about hurt in terms of painful feelings, this person with jealousy, they can't cause you any painful feelings. Any painful feelings that you're experiencing are coming from within your own mind. And you're going to need to understand the Four Noble Truths and the way that I teach it in order to be able to know that and independently verify it. So you might, since you're on our YouTube channel, is do a search in our YouTube channel for chapter 4. Look at one of the recent ones that I've done in the last year or so, and you can learn the Four Noble Truths because I walk you through in a way that you can independently verify, and you can see how it's not possible for other people to hurt you, meaning experience painful feelings. It's your own mind that's causing that. They can cause harm to your physical body, to your material possessions, or your reputation, but in those situations, I suggest you distance yourself from that person because they have ill will towards you. And the last thing you're interested in doing is being around people that have ill will towards you because they're showing you that they don't want you to be well because they have ill will towards you. And I would distance yourself from that type of individual because it's only going to cause harm in your life. All right, so Alberto has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. Hi, David. Hi, everyone. There's some specific situations where I feel fear and as fear because I identify that in my body is the same as fear, which I think I refer to that as fear of confrontation that affects me more in work settings, a little less in friend circles and friend circles. But oh sorry, I thought my Zoom was ending. But so specifically speaking, it's like in work meetings and I have this fear. I get this fear it's a feeling of fear when I have something to say, I have leadership positions, where I make decisions, and not everyone is pleased. So when and that prevents me from taking leadership positions. I try kind of like aversions. I don't want to be the main guy responsible for a certain task or responsibilities. And I know that I do not cause people's feelings is their own cravings, desires, and attachments. And I know that I have the expectation to please everyone, and I need to work on that. But I still struggle to find the balance. I had this situation last week where we had a meeting. I know that I was one of the senior faculty, and I know that I have a lot to contribute. What I was proposing made sense for the benefits of the program, but there was this one or two faculty members who were not really pleased with what I said, and they maybe were like 10 or 15% of all the members, but that is still, I brought this discontentedness home with me, and I know all that in theory, but I don't know how to come up with a plan because I still felt it.
Okay, keep doing what you're doing. So in those situations where now your mind's like, oh, I'm never going to share with the senior faculty again my ideas, that's what the mind might want to do, might push it away, but do just the opposite. When you're in those situations, keep sharing. But in those situations where you're noticing the discontentedness come up, cut it off and let it go. Keep cutting it off and letting it go. The mind needs to accumulate enough benefits of practicing the Eightfold Path, which includes meditation and generosity and all those other things. This is what the Buddha refers to as maturing and release. That the mind needs to mature and mature and mature and mature and mature before it finally releases an attachment. One of the ways that I think about it is like an accumulation of benefits. It's almost like a snowball. That while I'm giving you this guidance here, it's not like you can go out today and immediately eliminate the craving and get rid of the fear. You need to have enough of the meditation and generosity and all the other things on the Eightfold Path under your belt. And then over repeated situations, putting your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, which is sharing your ideas, sharing your opinions, even taking a leadership position, maybe taking a small thing, not a really big one, but maybe like a small one, and then build on that and build on that and build on that. So that's what you would like to be able to do, and understand that the mind's going to need to gradually mature with enough meditation, enough generosity, enough of putting your mind in these situations before the mind will finally release its attachment.
Okay, yeah, that can be helpful. Definitely, that would be helpful. But what is the attachment and the craving in these situations? It's like the craving for acceptance. I don't know.
That sounds like part of it. Your mind's going to know the best. I can give you ideas. Sounds like you might have a craving to please everybody, for everybody to be pleased. You could have craving for acceptance, like you just said. But you need to look inward and be able to see that. Maybe you have a craving for people to agree with your ideas. Nonetheless, whether there's two, three, four, five cravings, because sometimes with really strong discontentedness, there's more than just one craving. Nonetheless, no matter how many cravings or what the craving is, if you put your mind in the situation, it will trigger it. And the mind has to be able to cut it off and let it go and let it go. Eventually, your mind will let it go. It's only a matter of time.
Right. Okay. So it's probably like you have a craving for pleasing or acceptance because I'm usually in these situations where I'm going to be appointed. I recommended to take a leadership position and say, Alberto, you should do that because you get along with everyone. No, I don't want to do it. Why do you want to do it? That's exactly why, because I get along with everyone. And I know, when you make decisions, people get pissed. I don't like that. So yeah, and I try to stay away from that, which is sometimes I cannot, or sometimes my response is responsible to take leadership, and I feel aversion. Uh-huh.
Yeah, this is why fear is so detrimental to your success in life. That's why I started that at the beginning, because I also think you'd be a great leader, Alberto, but that fear is holding you back from being able to realize that potential. So that's why you would like to put your mind in the situation and you maybe surprise yourself about how well you could actually do. Whereas if you hold on to these cravings that you have and allow it to produce this fear, then you're not going to be able to experience those opportunities in your life.
Yeah, and it's definitely helping me out. The realization of I am not causing this person to feel that way. It's her own cravings, desires, and attachments, and I remind myself to that of that. That is helping me. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, you live in the US, so you're around a lot of people who have wrong view. They think that
A lot.
other people are causing them to feel a certain way. I see it so many places, even in courts of law. I just saw something recently on the news where a judge was talking to a plaintiff and the defendant and said, "You are making me angry. You are annoying me. You are frustrating me." It's like, no, they're not. So even like really educated people who are like judges and lawyers and stuff like this, they don't understand these things. So you're surrounded by a bunch of people who think that it's outside things that are causing their inner feelings. But as long as you're square on this, as long as you have the wisdom, that's what's important.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I see a lot of thank yous here from Jess and people online and YouTube as well. You guys are very welcome. Pleased to help you guys. Mayu Lee in Facebook has a question. She says, "Teacher, I don't have fear from not getting to enlightenment because I can always continue in the next lifetime. But I might have fear of not getting into the first stage of enlightenment, as I might not be reborn into human or heavenly realm to be able to continue, although I don't have any discontentedness." Okay, well, the fear is the discontentedness. If you have fear of, not getting to the first stage of enlightenment, that is the discontentedness. So if you're having the fear of that, you can do the same thing that I mentioned to Paul, which is put your mind in that contemplation where you envision not getting to that and just get comfortable with it. There's oftentimes a craving in the mind. Once we hear about this peaceful and joyful mental state that is possible, we start craving it and longing, yearning for it. So instead, set that aside, think about it as your mind is already enlightened, but also you could do that contemplation that you envision that you actually haven't gotten to the first stage of enlightenment and you are reborn into the animal realm or the afflicted spirit realm. Envision that and see what that's like and get your mind comfortable with that, so that that's the way that you can train your mind to eliminate any potential craving that is producing fear. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do then is just end class by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you so much for your interest to learn and grow and develop. It's nice that we actually took that poll because we could skip over the Four Noble Truths and we could get into a lot of discussion about all these different topics. So it's really great that you guys answered that, and I was able to get some insight on that. And then we are able to have a much fuller class, just really honing in on fears and having a lot of discussion. So thank you guys for all your questions and the discussion. Next week in our class, I'm going to be in chapter 18. Chapter 18 is titled God's Creative Action, You Have Free Will. This is where I'm going to teach you about this being of God and how you can get to enlightenment with a relationship with this being or without a relationship with this being. You don't have to have a relationship with this being of God in order to get to enlightenment, because it's not God that determines whether you get to enlightenment or not, because you have free will. The Buddha didn't put God at the center of his teachings, but he does talk about God and he helps people to understand this being. So I'm going to help you to understand this being so that if you're interested in having a relationship with this being, you can, because the things that you've learned about this being in the past may or may not actually be true. If you've been taught that this being is punishing you, or that you need to fear this being, or this being is controlling you, or things like this isn't actually true. So I'm going to be teaching you and helping to clear up your understanding about what this being is. And then if you'd like to have a relationship with this being, you can, and I'll teach you how to do that. But your enlightenment isn't dependent on that. You can actually get to enlightenment without a relationship with this being. So I'm going to teach you how to do that as well, because there's certain things that you need to understand in terms of getting to enlightenment without a relationship with this being. So I'll teach you all of that next week. And if you'd like to read the chapter before or after class, you're more than welcome to do that. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing meditation with students, so that I'll do meditation, guide you in a meditation session, and then open up to any and all questions that you guys might have. And keep in mind that I'm here in California for 2 weeks, and I'm going to be starting a course next week, Wednesday through Sunday, and I'm going to be live streaming it from here in California. So I usually don't live stream based on this time zone. So for some of you guys that are in a similar time zone, this course might actually be more accessible to you in a live format. So feel free to tune in to any of our classes. We're going to be live streaming through Facebook, YouTube, and we're going to have Zoom up so you guys can come in and participate in the course, because there's going to be plenty of people here that are participating, and you guys are welcome to participate as well. All you need to do is look on our website for the times of those courses and the classes and the dates, and you can come right into Zoom or YouTube or Facebook, and you'll be able to see that. And if you need help getting access to the times and the schedule and all of that, all you need to do is look to our website, buddhadailywisdom.com, click on classes, courses, and retreats, and go down to Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment. And from there, you're going to see the course for the USA. And if you click on that, it's going to show you a detailed agenda of each day and each time that I'm going to be teaching each course and each class. And it's based on Pacific time zone, because we're here in California. So you might just need to adjust the time zone based on wherever you are in the world. So once again, thank you all for joining. Thank you for everything you do to learn and practice these teachings. Thank you for any support that you're providing for me. I really appreciate that. And perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.